What's the best mulch? Sawdust? Leaf mold? Wood chips? Hay? The last few days I've had quite a few questions about mulch. About sawdust, about wood chips, about leaf mold, about hay. For me, when I started this, I couldn't get enough of any one thing to cover the entire garden. And it wasn't near as big as it is now. That's where I came up with mixed mulch. I mix it all together. But if you're wanting to talk about each one individually, they all have benefits. I think mixing them together amplifies those benefits. But what I'm sitting on here is what you'd call either sawdust or wood shavings, you know, just basic animal bedding. You can get this in bales like I'm sitting on, plastic bags like I have the leaves in right now. You can get it in bulk. The cost varies depending on how you're doing it. One of the drawbacks is you got to pay for it. I kind of like these bales, and I use them off and on because you can take and really place it right where you want it, as opposed to a wheelbarrow load where you're dumping and it spreads everywhere. One of the biggest drawbacks about animal bedding or shavings usually comes off of kiln dried lumber when they're milling it and they're making cabinetry or whatever they're making. The problem with that is there's no moisture left in it, and it takes it a long time to absorb the moisture and start breaking down. And that's the other reason I like to use that in conjunction with the leaf mold or the wood chips that already have some life going in them. Now with the wood chips, you leave those out and you see this fungus in here, that's breaking that down. And that adds to that mycorrhizal fungi that happens underneath the ground. If your town has some kind of mulch center, you might be able to pick this up for free. You just have to load it. So I go ahead and mix this with the sawdust, with the leaf mold, with the hay, with the grass clippings. We got life started here. It breaks it down quicker. It's a colder compost than if you're doing a compost pile. Right here in front of the greenhouse, I put the shavings down as a walkway, knowing they're going to take a little longer to break down. But if you can see, one of my favorite wilds, they're coming right on up through there. We've also used the sawdust around the garlic. That way I could place it really precisely. And then again with the leaf mold, that's pretty much free. Sometimes you need to take a trip out to the woods. The benefits of going out in the woods and looking for leaves, they're free. Well, kind of free. It's going to involve a rake and some bags. And if you can find an area that's kind of blown up, look at that underneath there. It's already breaking down. It's got that beautiful orange color in there. You want to get as much of that in your bag as you can. Sometimes you can pick it up from the neighbors if they rake them, bag them for you. Sometimes you can help the neighbors. But like we talked about with the shavings, it's very clean. You can take a handful and put it right where you want to. You can be very precise. Or in bulk, you can just dump it out and then spread it out. Remember, if all you're going to use is shavings or animal bedding, make sure it's at least 4 inches thick. Now, as animal bedding, if you've got rabbits, chickens, some of the bigger animals, that's okay too, because we're just putting it on top. We're not tilling this in. And if you have nothing else available, they work really well. But like I said, they're dry and they take a long time to break down. So if we just cover them with a little bit of leaf mold, that starts to work. And if you get it stirred in a little bit, get a little of your hay on top, that's okay. I've also had a couple questions about hay. One is about herbicides. You don't want to use treated hay or the manure from an animal that's eaten treated hay. Grazon, glyphosate, they will break down, they will leave your garden, I guess, but it takes months and months. You can lose an entire year. So try to stay away from treated hay at all costs. So how do you know whether or not your hay's been treated? I've got a couple rules of thumb. One, you have to know the person putting it up. If you don't have that luxury, I've been pretty lucky this way. Any kind of advertisement for hay, you look for the cheapest in that group. Go look at it, and if it's got weeds in it, that person probably did not spend any money to put down herbicides. I've received a bunch of questions about the leaves blowing away. And in these episodes, this time of year, you can hear the wind. Well, I've got plenty of wind. Like this morning when we went and got them out of the woods, they're a little damp, so I'm not worried about it. But if you are worried about it, then you can put your hay on top, or your sawdust, or your wood chips. It's all part of mixing it together anyhow. And then once we get a little weather on here, we get a little snow or rain. And for me, once they've been here a while, they kind of stay in place. If you've had trouble with them blowing away, you can always put a little weight on top of them. Make sure you pile it up 4 inches thicker. I also got a comment about the best way to use leaf mold is to take and mow it a couple times, make it little pieces. Well, you got to be careful. You need air. And by making it little, yeah, it's easier to pick up if you've got a lawnmower and you've got a bag system, something like that. But you put it on, you run the risk of going anaerobic. And then that defeats your entire purpose. Our purpose is to have aerobic, with air, aerobic life attracted to our garden. We are not feeding the plants with this mulch. We're just giving the environment the life in the soil can thrive. And by leaving it in full pieces, comes to another comment I got about worms under the ground and they can't swim. Yes, when we get a lot of rain, just like if it's a tilled up garden, the soil gets a lot of moisture in it. Those worms, if you've got a decent layer of mulch, they come up out of the soil and they kind of hang out in the mulch and then go back down. If you ever come in after a rainstorm and had your big night crawlers on your driveway dried up, they had no place to go once it dried up. And in the deep mulch, they've got a great habitat. It's okay to chop up your leaves. Just be careful that you don't pack them in too tight. You want to make sure you have plenty of air in there. Another big question I get all the time is what kind of leaves do we use? I use whatever I rake up. And from what I understand in North America, even black walnut, if you're putting it on top, does not hurt your garden. What about pine needles and acidity? Well, I put pine needles on top. Everything grows just fine. As long as you're not tilling it in. Remember, tilling it in will bind up nitrogen. We'll also introduce all kinds of things into that layer that has the life that you want. All we're doing is putting a blanket on top to help promote that life. And in the winter like now, where it's cold, we're keeping that life warm. It's going to be ready for those roots to come down. And you can do this too. It's pretty simple. Get a little bit of exercise, you get out and enjoy the fresh air, a little sunshine before it snows. And don't stress about what kind of organic material you're using for your mulch. As long as it's not treated with anything, get whatever you can get, mix it together, layer it on, 4 inches thicker, and you ought to be good to go. We're getting there. Work at it just a little bit each day. Pretty quick, your garden's going to be ready for spring and for planting. And if you'd like to learn more about healthy soil and eliminating most weeds, you could check out my book. It's in the description box below. And like I've been saying, I'm not going to tell another adult how to garden. I'm just showing you what I do. And if you find any of this helpful and you want to learn more, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if you bought one of my books. And until next time, remember, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and God bless you. Come on, let's plant.
Let's go plant garden.